So this video is going to be a quick look at the subtotal function and how I can use that along with VLOOKUP and some drop-down filters to find out some averages and some sums of things. So real quick, the two videos that I've done before is how I get the drop-down menus up on there, which we talked about selecting on an area of a report, then going up to data, and then adding the filter to it, which I have done. The other part that we talked about was VLOOKing up a piece of information from one place to another. And as you can see here, I've set up a VLOOKUP that'll look up the district number in a different report, which I also have over there. So I had to do those two things before I was able to get anything useful. So now I want to look at some of the kind of aggregate data. And as you can see right here, this set of data is a total, and one of the interesting things about Excel is there's this count function. So I've selected 199 items right here, which you can see. If I were to go a column over, you could see it would be 398, and it kind of moves the column like that. So when I'm looking at things, I can quickly find counts, I can find averages. Oh, there's no average there because there's no numbers. I could find maxes, hey, minimums, sums, you name it. But when there's numbers, the only thing you can really do is find counts. So that's what it's going to get clicked on. But without using this little function, what I might also want to do is be able to see when I select on different things without having to use my mouse what happens automatically. And I use that using the subtotal function. So what a subtotal function does is it'll automatically do some math for me depending on what I have selected. So what you first want to do is, again, you're going to be setting up a formula and then creating an array and then telling it to do something with an array. So the first thing I want to do is create a hole in order to put my subtotals in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a couple of rows up in here, and I'm going to make three different subtotals so that we know what we're working with. So the first one that I'm going to do is call it our counts. So I might want to know what the count of any item is on here. And what I'm going to do is I don't like to usually work with a report that goes all the way over to the left. I like to have a little bit of room in case I make something, so because that way I can add in some labels. So the first thing I want to do is I might want to know what my average is. Might want to know what the count of items I have selected is, and I might want to know what the sum of everything that I've selected on is. So those are the three things that we're going to use the subtotal function to do. So it's pretty easy to start off with a count. What you do is you tell Excel that you want to put in a subtotal, and you say for some reason this is deciding to put me into the middle of my screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight over here, select my area I want, and I want it to be over in the left-hand corner of the cell. So now it's typing where it should be typing. Great. So in any case, I've just reformatted that. Now, again, we're using the same form that Bob Humphrey sent out his PEX report, and I want to look at kind of what some opportunity gaps are. So one, I want to find out how many, my boss has asked me, how many stores do you have that haven't made a sale? Okay, rather than going and counting one each, I'm going to use the subtotal function to do that. So I'm going to say equals subtotal, and that's telling Excel that I have a function. Open parenthesis, and then Microsoft Excel recognizes that. It's going to ask for a function number. So I don't remember what my function number is. So when I don't remember something, I just go over and I type in subtotal up in Microsoft Excel. I ask the question, and what comes up is a reminder of all of the subtotal functions. So what I'm going to want to do is count A. There's a difference between count and count A. I don't remember what that is. So right now we're just going to go with count A. Trust me on that. You can look it up if you want later to find out what the different thing is. But that tells me my function number is 3. So I'm going to go in back to here. I'm going to say I want you to count the cells that I've selected in the array. It's going to say reference 1. That's my start point. South Bay, which is C12. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom, which is Control-Shift down. I'm going to highlight everything in there, and that's going to go all the way up to C210. So you can see right here it goes from C12 to C210, and then I'm going to end my parenthesis, and that is going to give me a count of everything that I have going on in the cell. So I have a count of a total number of 199 items over there. Now, if I selected a couple of filters like Central Valley, I'd only have 3. NorCal Bins, I'd have 18. South Bay, I'd have 37. So, wow, this is really useful to me. Now I can find out a count of my total number of items that I have on here selected. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag that across. I'm going to say Control C. And I want to know what the counts are of every one of these columns. Now, most of my filters are going to be the same, but there's going to be times when they're not. So I'm just going to drag that all the way across and get to see that there. So that's my first thing that I'm going to do in terms of my count. The next thing that I want to do is find out a sum. The only thing that I'm going to change right there, so I'm going to have my sum right over here. And one of the interesting things that I could have done this quicker, but we'll go through the drill the whole way. What I want to set up is a sum of the total number of things that I have on here. So I'm going to say equals subtotal, and then I want a sum. Can't remember which sum it is, so I go back to my help desk, and sum is 9. That's my function number. So I go back into here and say 9, and my reference point is anything that I'm going to have selected. And I go down to the start point, Control Shift down, and I'm going to hit on the close parenthesis bar, and it is going to give me a sum of everything over here. As you can see, there's no numbers over there, so that's not going to do anything for me. But it will in some of my other columns. So I copy that, Control C, arrow over 1, select on the area that I want to get some more of those things. I'm going to hit Control V, and now as you can see, it's going to give me a sum of some more interesting things. Well, the sum of all my districts doesn't make too much sense. I don't really need that number. The sum of all these names doesn't do very much for me. The sum of all these routes also doesn't. And you know what? I'm going to erase these things as I go by because it's not that interesting. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to delete that. I'm going to delete my store routes. But wow, this is the sum of all the store numbers. Don't really need that. The sum of all the cities doesn't really useful. 12-week average. Well, if I format this in terms of dollars, you can see that this is a total store average of $203,000. If I look at the total cases to date, the sum of that I've sent in, that's 566, and my total sales to date of that number, now that sum becomes a lot more interesting. So if I select on, for example, the South Bay, and I want to find out anything on a custom filter that has sold, total cases of less than 15. It's less than, we'll call it 15. Okay, and that's all going to be in the South Bay. Well, you'll now notice that my dollar gap has changed. So for anything that's 15, that's causing me a total loss of business of $2,793. Wow, that's a big deal. Now I'm using my filters to kind of tell me something with a total opportunity gap here of 15K without any type of filter. The last thing I might want to do is also put in an average. So again, I would start from my upper left-hand corner, and I would say equals subtotal. My average is function 1. I remember that because I saw it last time. I go down here, and I would select on the area that I need it to be. Done. Close the parenthesis, collect over there. My average shows that you can't really have an average of a bunch of numbers. That makes sense. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to highlight this over to the end. And there's a bunch of things that don't make sense, so I'm going to get rid of them. Don't need to average that, don't need the average of that, don't need the average of that, or that, or that, or that. But I might want the 12-week average of this. This is going to be a number. This is going to be a dollar value. And this is going to be a dollar value also. So the useful thing about this now is now I found a way to get the sum, average, and count of a couple of key items that that I want to look at. And I'm going to make sure that we can see this stuff easily by putting a quick box around that stuff. I go over here and make a little box like that. So here we have our sums, our counts, and our averages all laid out real nice. So if I want to go in and find out the average dollar gap brought in for, I've selected on the South Bay zone. I now want to find, call it Victoria's district. I go in there and I say, she has 8 total stores. That's my count. For a sum of $7,000 sales to date with a 12-week average of 51K to date. Her average 12-week average of the stores that she's not bringing into is 6,400, and that's about a 904 on average sales to date for all of her stores. Wow, that tells me a lot more information that I can now have a conversation better with District 875 Victoria Lau. Or I could go into Ramiro, do the same thing. I could go to Doug. And this can work with an RSR level type data, a DSL level type data. The important thing is you've made yourself a quick window to look at a bunch of data in terms of filters that let you do things. So if I want to find out, sales to date of any information right there, you'll notice that the numbers are all the same because I'm not really taking averages or counts. That's where the custom filter part comes in. If I want to find out what my gap in San Jose is, wow, now I can see that on average I have $796 sales dollars on average sales to date, a total of $10,000 sales to date, and I'm able to get much more better looks at the group of data depending on what I've selected with, and then make some comparisons, make some conversations and phone calls. So that is how you use the subtotal function.